The Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities now has a direct video conferencing line for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, ASL Direct. ASL Direct connects users to an information specialist fluent in ASL that can provide information about New York City services. If you have a friend, family member, or neighbor who is deaf or hard of hearing, let them know about ASL Direct. Help us spread the word. For more information or to get connected to New York City government, visit nyc.gov/ASL. That's nyc.gov/ASL.
Remember, for more information about New York City government services, dial 311 or visit nyc.gov.
Are you ready for the next emergency? I'm New York City Emergency Management Commissioner Joe Esposito, here to remind you of the simple steps you can take to prepare. Discuss potential hazards with your family and make a plan to keep everyone safe. Keep extra supplies at home and have a go bag ready if you have to leave home in a hurry. September is National Preparedness Month. Take some extra time to prepare with your loved ones. Remember, disasters don't plan ahead, but you can.
I'm Carmelyn P. Malalis, Commissioner and Chair of the New York City Commission on Human Rights. It's difficult to overstate the challenges facing so many New Yorkers in this current political climate. That's why we, at the Commission on Human Rights, have increased our outreach efforts to let everyone in New York City know that discrimination and harassment are unacceptable and illegal in our city. To report it, call us at 718-722-3131 or visit us at nyc.gov/humanrights.
Remember, for more information about New York City government services, dial 311.
Si trabajas en una empresa u organización sin fines de lucro, tienes derecho a ausencia laboral debido a seguridad o enfermedad. Puedes utilizarla para mantener tu seguridad en caso de violencia doméstica, contacto sexual no deseado, acoso o tráfico de personas. O puedes utilizarla para asuntos de salud. Llama al 311 o visita nyc.gov/DCA para obtener más información o para presentar una queja.
Hi, I'm DCAS Commissioner Lisette Camilo. The Department of Citywide Administrative Services is an instrumental part of New York City government. We're comprised of more than 2,000 employees who work in personnel management, engineering, procurement, real estate, custodial services, and more. We're on a mission to be customer-focused, service-driven. To find out more about what DCAS does and who we are, visit nyc.gov/DCAS.
Remember, for more information about New York City government services, dial 311 or visit nyc.gov.
I'm Victor Calisi, Commissioner of the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. Traveling around the city can become a challenge when drivers fail to follow basic parking rules. Parking spaces designated for people with disabilities ensure equal access to goods and services. Parking without a permit in a designated space or using a fake permit is illegal. For more information, dial 311.
Hi, I'm Roy Mogolansky, Executive Director of the City of New York Office of Payroll Administration. City employees, did you know that when you sign up for the WageWorks Commuter Benefits Program, you'll save money on your commute to work by having funds set aside from your paycheck before taxes are taken out? So you'll pay less in taxes, up to $900 a year if you take mass transit alone, and up to $1,800 if parking is part of your commute. Visit getwageworks.com/NYC.
Remember, for more information about New York City government services, dial 311.
I'm Commissioner Greg Bishop of the New York City Department of Small Business Services. Do you need help signing, renewing, or resolving some other issue with a business lease in New York City? You may be eligible for free legal services. For more information, call 311 and ask for commercial lease assistance or visit nyc.gov/SBS. That's nyc.gov/SBS.
This is New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer. As the city's chief fiscal officer, I can tell you that women and minority-owned businesses are critical to New York. These businesses hire locally, buy locally, and they help us be a true five-borough economy. If you're a woman or minority-owned business and you're interested in becoming certified to do business with the city, give us a call at 212-669-3916, and we'll give you the tools you need to succeed.
Remember, for more information about New York City government services, dial 311 or visit nyc.gov.
They do the work few ever see and fight for kids and families most of us never hear about. They're the ones who answer the call for help when a loving mom can't afford food, when addiction, domestic violence, or mental health issues turn a family upside down, even when new parents need a crib so their newborn can sleep safe. When our city's kids and families need help, Child Protective Specialists are there. Learn more about Child Protective Specialists at nyc.gov/CPS.
This is Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer. On Saturday, September 29, 2018, is a conference to improve academic outcomes for men and boys of color called My Brother's Keeper. The conference is inviting all Manhattan parent leaders and student leaders to attend. Call the Manhattan Borough President's Office at 212-669-8300 to get information.
Remember, for more information about New York City government services, dial 311.
Hello, I'm Buildings Commissioner Rick Chandler. Construction safety is our top priority to protect both workers and the public. Starting this spring, most construction workers will need to have approved safety training or they will not be able to work. For more information, please visit nyc.gov/DOB. Working together, we will build our city safely. Thank you.
Inspired by a letter sent to the New York City Commission on Human Rights.
I was always in a good mood. Then it happened.
My coworker approached me from the back, grabbed me, and pressed down on my shoulders hard.
I tried to get away, but he pressed down on me even harder.
Does your husband please you like this? Does he get you excited?
There is no excuse.
This is sexual harassment, and New York City is ready to help and fight for you.
Call 718-722-3131 or visit nyc.gov/humanrights.
Remember, for more information about New York City government services, dial 311 or visit nyc.gov.
If you work at any business or nonprofit, you have the right to save and sick leave. Use it to seek help or take other
All right, all set? Everybody's good? Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. In a moment, you're going to hear from Mayor de Blasio. Then you're going to hear from Lori Pollack, our Chief of Crime Control Strategies. She's going to talk about the month of September and also about the third quarter. Summer is definitely behind us. I find that pretty hard to believe. Went by pretty quick.
Sure did.
And it was a very busy one as usual. And overall, it was a very safe summer. You'll hear that from Lori. We've just come off some major annual events here in New York City with the U.S. Open tennis tournament in Queens and the UN General Assembly in Manhattan. And I want to congratulate all the men and women of the NYPD and all the other agencies that helped, who showed yet again why we are the best police department in the United States of America. From traffic agents to patrol cops, from intel analysts to counterterrorism experts, the NYPD did a great job of safeguarding all the visitors to our great city from far and wide, while balancing that with the absolute need to relentlessly fight crime and keep New Yorkers safe in every neighborhood. And our reach and expertise goes beyond the borders of our 5 boroughs, as you know. There's a press conference later on today over at OEM, and I just want to quickly commend the approximately 100 New York City police, fire, and other emergency personnel who, as part of the elite FEMA task force, recently got back from North Carolina. They checked in on or rescued literally hundreds of people and animals in the wake of Hurricane Florence. Our agencies have responded to disasters like this since the early 1990s. New York City has some of the finest, highly trained professionals anywhere. We know it's always our duty to help others in dire need whenever and wherever our skills are needed. So I thank our FEMA team for what they did down south and for what I'm sure they'll do again in the future. I'll turn it over to the mayor right now. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Congratulations again to you and all the leadership at NYPD here on another very strong performance in the month of September. Before I speak to the statistics that have been put out today, I want to talk about another issue that's very much on the minds of all of us and all New Yorkers. And I want to frame it by saying this is going to be a very bipartisan statement, because the concern I'm going to raise is really a call to conscience for everyone in the federal government, for the President, for the Senate, for the House, Democrats and Republicans alike. All of them like to talk in terms of patriotism. All of them like to honor our first responders. Well, this is going to be the moment of truth, because we have learned about a very painful reality that has now been confirmed publicly, that the fund that has been put aside to care for those sickened on and after 9/11, those who went and did the right thing, the first responders who went to save lives and then try and make families whole again, who participated in the recovery effort, all those first responders who were sickened have depended on the federal government to be there for them. But here's what we now know. The fund that was set up for victims and survivors is running out of money, and it is set to expire in 2020, and that is unacceptable. Anyone who says they care about first responders in Washington has to step up. It's as clear as a bell. This fund must be made permanent. There must be enough money to take care of those who served us all so valiantly, put their lives on the line, and are paying the price for it right now. So if ever there is something that should be bipartisan, it's this. But remember how many times we had to fight for this basic funding, this basic support for our heroic first responders. Again, this is a moment where it's really, really simple. All of you should ask every member of the House, every member of the Senate, and the President, will they support a permanent fund for the victims and survivors of 9/11? Will they fully fund it, period? And I want you to know that we are going to demand that Congress do the right thing. We're going to shine a light on those who do the right thing and those who don't. But I am going to make sure that all of the resources of this city are brought to bear to honor those who sacrifice so much and do all we can for them. Just want to very quickly summarize that in Spanish. El Fondo de Compensación para las Víctimas del 11 de septiembre se está quedando sin dinero. El Congreso debe actuar para que el fondo sea permanente y asignar los recursos que necesita. With that, want to turn to the information that's been put out today about our continuous fight against crime. It's very clear after 9 months, 3/4 of the year 2018, New York City is and continues to be the safest big city in America. The efforts of the NYPD have been extraordinary, but we also see very clearly this year the NYPD is comparing itself to the record-setting year 2017, and that's not easy. We do see some challenges we need to address, and we take them very seriously. Writ large, as you'll hear from Chief Pollack, crime is down. A lot of very positive trends continue. We continue to be concerned about what we've seen with an increase in rape, and that is obviously directly connected to an increase in reporting. That increase in reporting is necessary to turn the tide once and for all and make sure that perpetrators are brought to justice. But it's an area of continued concern. We do see a noticeable uptick in terms of homicide. We take that very seriously. I am absolutely convinced that the NYPD has the approach and the resources to address that issue. But when you look overall, crime is down 1% compared to last year, and last year was the all-time record year. So the NYPD continues to achieve, and very importantly, shooting incidents down almost 5% compared to last year. So in a country where we are rightfully focused constantly on the issue of gun safety, and where there's too many guns in circulation, the NYPD continues to do extraordinary things in terms of reducing the number of shooting incidents. I want to give tremendous credit to the men and women out there protecting us on our streets, and also commend the department for the use of technologies like ShotSpotter, which have made a big difference. So we know neighborhood policing continues to produce results. We know precision policing continues to produce results. We're going to drive those strategies further. But I'm going to make the point again, if there's something that needs more attention in this equation, it's that the NYPD has achieved all this while continuously reducing the number of arrests. I don't see honestly and respectfully, I don't see this story being told enough. I think it's an incredibly powerful story. It speaks to a police department that's using all its tools properly, that is using its training to maximum effect. Also, in an era where there's tremendous concern about justice and reducing mass incarceration, what better way to reduce mass incarceration than to reduce unnecessary arrests? If you look at the numbers this year compared to last year, arrests down 12%, crime down as well. Very powerful fact. All of this comes down to human beings. Every time we talk about stats, it's really about the human beings behind them. It's about the families that are safer, the people that are safer, the neighborhoods that are safer. And the NYPD has done an extraordinary job this year and certainly in the month of September. Just very quickly in Spanish. Aunque logramos niveles históricamente bajos el año pasado, la policía sigue reduciendo el crimen. Tenemos mucho más que hacer, pero el NYPD nunca deja de innovar. Con su trabajo duro, vamos a seguir haciendo de Nueva York una ciudad más segura y más justa. With that, we turn to Chief Pollack for the details of the update.
Good afternoon. Thank you. As the mayor said, we continue to make unbelievable strides in reducing overall crime. We are down almost 2% in overall crime for the month of September and 1% for the year. That is a reduction of over 700 crimes year to date. Again, we are on trend for another record-setting year of below 97,000 crimes. However, year to date, we are up 13 murders, 228 versus 215. 228 is still the lowest number through the third quarter in history. And I would like to give some perspective on the murder increase, so I'll break the year down into quarters. But when we're talking about murders in terms of numbers, this is in no way, shape, or form meant to minimize the impact that the tragic loss of life means to family and friends. The numbers serve to inform us as to where they're happening and why, and what we're doing to prevent crime. So in the first quarter, we had a record-breaking low. 57 murders versus 66. 66 was the previous low, so that was a decrease of 9 murders. The second quarter is where we saw a marked increase, 92 versus 70. The Bronx drove these murder numbers for the citywide second quarter with an increase of 20 murders, 33 versus 13, with no singular defining motive. However, notably, stabbing murders were up 11 versus 1 in the Bronx, and domestics were up 5 versus 0. We made tremendous adjustments going to the third quarter to address the homicides and gang violence citywide and specifically in the Bronx. We deployed some were all out heavily in the Bronx. We increased the ceasefire catchment area to include the 4-6 and 5-2 precincts, in addition to the existing catchment areas of the 4-0 precinct and PSA 7, which covers housing in the South Bronx. We worked closely with our partners in parole and probation to add geographical and curfew restrictions on gang and crew members to prevent retaliatory violence. And these weren't just one-size-fits-all steps. A perfect example is the citywide Trinitario enforcement action, which prevented parolees and probationers from attending certain events like Dominican Day Parade. And we continue to work closely with prosecutors to enhance all gun prosecutions. These measures have brought the Bronx murder number down significantly in the third quarter, 18 versus 26. That's a decrease of 8. Year to date, the Bronx is still showing an increase of 14 murders, 66 versus 52. The Bronx increase of 14 may be hard to overcome by the end of the year, but their shootings are down 31 year to date and down 5 shootings in September from 25 to 20, which is an unbelievable reduction in gun violence in the Bronx. In the third quarter, as the Bronx was trending down overall, Queens was 20 versus 18, but specifically Queens North saw an increase of 10 murders versus 3. We saw 2 domestic violence tragedies that took 4 lives and 2 additional murders, giving the 114 precinct 6 versus 1 in the third quarter. Again, through analysis and redeployment, we are seeing significant reductions in violence in those areas. We finished the third quarter with a total of 79 murders, which tied with last year for the lowest number of murders in any third quarter. When we talk specifically about murder in September, we had an increase of 3 murders, 27 versus 24. The murders were spread across 5 boroughs. Brooklyn saw an increase of 5 murders, 12 versus 5. Queens, an increase of 3, 6 versus 3. Bronx saw a decrease of 1, 6 versus 7. Manhattan saw a decrease of 2, 3 versus 5. The majority of our 27 murders involved people known to each other. Majority had an underlying crime nexus that resulted in the murder. Of these September murders, we have seen a significant increase in people dying from being shot, and 16 of our 27 murders were from guns, which is an increase of 6 over last year. 4 of our 27 murder incidents were the result of domestic violence. 2 of the 4 incidents involved families that had no prior history of reporting with the police. And in general, 70% of our murders have no prior history of reporting. So to that end, we have been working very closely with our federal partners in the Southern District to prosecute domestic violence offenders that possess a gun or ammunition. And that's a huge step towards keeping these people in prison, not to increase family violence, which leads me to shootings. The year-to-date number is down 28 shootings, 573 versus 601. The city has now seen the city has now seen decreases in shootings in 8 consecutive quarters. September's trend was no different. We had a historically low number of shootings in September, which was 70 versus 79. Our rape numbers, yes, they are trending up. We had 22% increase, 144 versus 118, and 24% or 35 of those reports occurred outside of the CompStat year. Our robberies are down 2%, 1,128 versus 1,151. Our felony assaults are also down 6.5%. Burglaries down 2.9%. Grand larceny down 1.2%. Our housing crime is down 32 crimes, down 7.7% for the month. And in closing, I would like to emphasize that this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and every contact we have with a victim of family violence is an opportunity to provide services, document an incident that can be followed with an order of protection, remove a gun from the household. Friends and family often know that there are people in crisis, and there are discreet ways of helping them. So I'm going to leave you with this phone number, 1-800-621-HOPE or 4673. And if you could put that out there, and maybe
Could you repeat that to someone here?
Sure. 1-800-621-HOPE. The last number is being 4673. Thank you.
I would take some on-topic questions about crime. Marcia?
I noticed that the rape numbers are up, and they have been up for a number of months now. And I wonder if you've developed a team to investigate these increased rapes. What are you doing to deal with the numbers?
Dermot?
Yeah, Marcia. So when you look at the rapes, it was actually this point last year when the increase really jumped up. October of 17 is when that spike started, and to some level, it's continued since. In recent memory, we've added some significant resources to the Special Victims Division. Earlier this year, we put 34 additional investigators to catch those cases. We've also added recently a significant number of resources in terms of supervisors into the Special Victims Division. So there's a lot going on. As has been mentioned, one of the first tasks I did in taking over the Detective Bureau is really look at the entire division, how it's operating, what's working well, what could use some improvement with a fresh set of eyes. Analyst was put in to try to streamline some of the work that's done and freeing up resources of existing detectives has been an emphasis. So there's a lot going on. In terms of, Lori mentioned, what we're seeing is still a lot of out-of-period rapes. But in terms of special victims, I think that when you look at some of the cases that have been highlighted in the news recently. The men and women overall in the Special Victims Division are doing phenomenal work in trying to apprehend as quickly as possible rapists when these crimes do occur.
Period rapes, are you having to investigate each and every one of them? And what are you finding? Are you able to solve some of these cases?
Yeah, well, I think I don't want to generalize, but first I'll start with the beginning. Every rape complaint that comes to us is investigated. And they're investigated thoroughly. Each one, though, is unique in terms of when it happened, the individuals involved. Each will get an investigation really tailored to the individual circumstances. And we've gone on record many times in trying to stress that we have a victim-centric model that we've really been pushing. So taking the complaint in, communicating right from the start with the victim, what the process entails, what the options are, the timetable, the ability to step in and out of the investigation, really. And many people do opt to step out of the investigation. For many, it's they want to report it, they want to get it off their chest, but sometimes a prosecution is not what's sought. So it's really, it goes to the training that our special victims men and women receive. They are well versed in this, and I think they handle this the crime with the utmost of compassion.
Marcia, let me jump in. I just want to emphasize, we want all victims to come forward. This is really important. I want to urge all the media here to get this message out. Dermot makes the point in the last year we've seen a lot more reports. I think that is directly connected to the kind of conversation we're finally having in our society, acknowledging the horrible number of sexual assaults against women that have been tragically, inappropriately the norm for too long in this country and must stop. But it stops by people coming forward and giving the best police force in the country the ability to go after the perpetrators. We do not want them ever to harm another woman. So we've got to encourage everyone, if you know something, bring it forward. It doesn't matter if it's from the past. We want these reports so we can bring justice.
We've seen an uptick because of the things that are going on in Washington, the Kavanaugh hearings, the women who come forward to testify about being raped. If there's any, connection to that, or you've just been seeing an increase because of all the Me Too movement that's been going on in the last year?
That the Me Too has been the year's trend. We haven't seen any perceptible difference in the month of September.
Tony?
For Chief Pollack, you mentioned two strategies that seem to have helped decrease the quarter homicides. You mentioned the ceasefire zones or initiative. Could you basically explain that? And could you also comment, if I heard you right, you are barring, or through probation or parole, you're actually constricting where certain gang members can go to in highly congregated areas, parades? Can you explain that?
Yes, that is worked through with ceasefire. Ceasefire is a focused deterrence intervention program where all probation, parole, prosecutors, NYPD, they sit on a board, and they, I'm not that, my explanation might not be as thorough as it should be, but the basic idea behind it is to offer as many services as possible to gang members and people that are involved in the violence. And if they don't take advantage of those services, there are consequences, and they are told of those consequences. And part of the agreement is that if they're on parole or probation, they have to abide by certain restrictions.
The restrictions would be
correct. Yes. Or areas that might result in retaliatory violence.
Are you seeing compliance with that, or do you not know?
Yes, we didn't have any incidents at the areas that they were supposed, Dominican Day Parade and certain other events that they were told to stay away from.
Rocco?
Chief Shea, Commission for you also. So with all the rhetoric coming out of Washington regarding the Kavanaugh hearings, criticism of the testimony, the president last night seemingly mocking her testimony, is there a concern that what you have fought for, meaning for victims to come forward, no matter how old the case might be, that gets offset by something like this?
Rocco, I don't think so. I think the work that we do with the advocates help us get that message out there, that we're looking for all victims of sexual assault to come forward. So we give us the opportunity to stop it by investigating it. So it might be too soon to tell, but we don't see that happening in New York City because of what's going on in Washington.
I just want to add, Rocco, the President of the United States mocking a victim of sexual violence is disgusting. And he's done many things that do not mark him as a leader, but this is one of the all-time lows. But I also want to say our society has moved way past Donald Trump. He has an attitude that's like lost in the 1950s. But today, what is happening all over this country is that people are believing victims and survivors. That's what we see more and more. That's the norm. And families are having really honest conversations they never had before. It's tragic that it has had to come out of some people's pain, but it is sparking a whole different national conversation. And I don't think the president's disgusting comments will change that one bit.
Did you say what the percentage of reporting increase is? In other words, there are 22% more rapes. Is there a percentage of how many more women are reporting this year from last year?
35 were out of the period from the total number. I'll give you the total number. Yes, month of September was 144 versus 118, and 35 of those reports occurred outside of this year.
Yep, in the back row.
The New York Times. So we're hearing a lot of anger and confusion from attendees of this Saturday's Global Citizen Festival about the mixed messaging from police response, about struggles they're having finding their lost property, recovering that. For the mayor and the police commissioner, do you have a response to people, to the attendees? A lot of them came from outside the city. Consume the way that Saturday night's events unfolded. Will you be changing things in the future? Will you be adjusting your strategies for the next coming events?
Yeah. Chief Harrison, Rodney.
Yes, good morning. So, Chief Kathy O'Reilly and Jimmy Waters had a great strategy prior to the event. We had over hundreds of police officers assigned to the concert, and anybody that attended was wanted. So the security was there. Before Janet Jackson performed, there was a dispute in the front left pen between two individuals. I think that kind of cultivated a little bit of a fear factor where people started scattering. And then once that occurred, some individuals stepped on what seemed to be water bottles, plastic water bottles, which ended up sounding like gunshots. So that's what started the stampede. We did I think, a very positive job of getting the information out to the people at the event, as well as people throughout the city regarding that there was nothing going on. We calmed everybody down and was able to continue to have a successful concert. Going forward, one thing that I always preach about is we always take a look at ourselves regarding what can we do to do better going in the future. So yes, there is an evaluation process that we'll have in place, and we'll make sure that things like this are somewhat reduced going into the future.
Yep.
Regarding restricting people, parolees going places, their ceasefire, is this the first year that that's happened, and was the West Indian Day Parade one of those events?
I can speak to. Sorry.
All right, with the ceasefire, it had been utilized a lot when one gang and another gang have had issues in certain developments. So we were able to restrict parolees from going back into where their gang hangouts were. This year was the first time that we did it during the Dominican parade, and that was in response to the junior homicide. We had information that there may be retaliation at a couple of the at these parades, specifically the Bronx parade. So working hand in hand with parole and probation, we were able to get those restrictions put in place, and both parades went off without incident.
Any other crime-related questions?
Chief Pollack, so I remember a couple of months ago, particularly in July, there was a large proportion of murders had a gang nexus. I'm wondering, given kind of the efforts you all have taken to target gang violence and limit that activity, have you all seen so far this year overall like an uptick in the number of murders that have been gang related as the number of homicides has increased overall?
No. The month of September, we've seen the same as last year, 7 versus 7. As far as the year goes, it vacillates. Right now, it's on the lower end. It vacillates between 20% and 35%.
Despite kind
No,
of...
there's no uptick. It's a factor. Oh, it's been a factor, but there's been no rise.
Rocco?
Well, Chief, in Manhattan, the numbers are up overall. I guess it's 3 and 4% for the south and the north. Other than rapes, there seem to be large spikes in burglaries and GLAs. Is it what is typically seen? Stolen laptops, electronics, or are there outstanding patterns that are contributing to that?
Rocco, I could talk about GLAs.
Yeah, I know.
We just had auto crime in the other day. Most of those GLAs, grand larceny autos, are scooters and motorcycles. That seems to be contributing to the increase.
Yeah. That is the lion's share up in Manhattan North was motorcycles and mopeds, things that are easily removed from the street. The grand larcenies, again, that does vacillate a lot. Manhattan South is a driver of grand larceny crimes. So,
Electronics mostly?
phones. I can't say that I have the information on the trends right now. I can get that for you later.
In the back row.
One, just to follow up on the remarks about local citizens. So the information about this dispute, starting, and that's new to us. Can the mayor or the police commissioner say something with regards to that? Second of all, regarding the former Brooklyn Vice cops that were arrested in September and charged with running a gambling and prostitution ring, are there more arrests coming in that? Do you all feel like you've actually swept the table with that? I know, Commissioner, that you talked about overhauling Vice's structure, the supervisory structure.
Okay, hey, do me a favor. Can we just do the first one first? Because it's getting kind of deep. So, the first one on Global Citizen.
So this is, I happened to be the CO of the Central Park Precinct way back in 1998, and it's a large venue on the Great Lawn. We have a great history of keeping events safe there. The way we have it segmented with the emergency lanes is very helpful. I think our use of social media, I think our first hit on social media was about 12 minutes into it. We could do better there. I think that would be very helpful. And I think getting Kathy O'Reilly and Chris Martin up on stage to calm the crowd, I think that was a good move. Maybe we could have done that a little bit quicker. But as Rodney said, whenever we have an event, we go back, we take a look at what happened and see how we can prevent it in the future.
Go ahead with the second question.
The Ludwig Paz, the ring led by the former detective, do you feel like are there more arrests coming?
Dan, you want to talk about that?
Sure. So nothing really has changed. The information you have already is pretty much where the investigation is for now. So there's no new information to speak about or that we can speak about at the moment.
Is there any federal involvement? Our understanding is some non-NYPD systems were accessed by those detectives.
No, I'm not going to get into that.
Marcia.
Commissioner, the police in Yonkers have tried out or are looking at a new way of stopping promotion of the students or other people who may have weapons. Instead of buying a taser, it's a device that fires a rope like a bolo that goes around in circles. I wonder if the NYPD would explore using that.
We are always looking at new technology. And at some point, we're not looking at it right now, but at some point I'm sure we will, and we'll confer with our partners up in Yonkers to get their thoughts on it. But we're always looking at new technology. John?
Do you think you're seeing a spike in, I guess, tourists taking risks, like say climbing on the Brooklyn Bridge and things like that, taking pictures and videos? Have you seen any kind of trend like that?
Nothing's been brought to my attention, and anybody that does climb on the bridges, we get them down pretty quickly. I think we had 2 bridge rescues by our involving emotionally disturbed people last week, and I'd like to commend the officers from ESU that did that climb. I don't know if everybody watched the video. I don't know if you'd get me up there doing that. So one of them was the same one that did the rescue on the Statue of Liberty. So I commend ESU. Marcia?
Last Friday, you and I discussed a homeless encampment at Police Plaza, which is compounded by the use of drugs. I wonder if any action has been taken since we discussed this last Friday.
Yeah, Terry Chief Monahan will talk about that. Terry?
All right, first off, Marcia, it's not an encampment. You know, we had encampments here in the city years ago, but we've done a tremendous job of responding quickly to these incidences. We were out there again just yesterday with a bunch of Department of Homeless Services, our homeless outreach unit, and we did a cleanup. What we found was five individuals who were homeless who were in the area. So we spoke to all of them. We offered them services. A couple of pieces of cardboard in and around the area. That was cleaned up. But it's an area that we're back on a daily basis. We work with the BID. We work with all the local businesses over there. And if we look at just the complaints in the neighborhood for the year, there have been 19 911 calls and 3 311 calls over in the area. So not really a big drug location. We don't see much K2. I think we've had 2 calls year to date involving use of K2 in the area. So it's a place that we're going to visit on a regular basis. But again, it's not an encampment. It was a couple of homeless people who were in the area with their shopping carts. So again, we can't arrest our way out of something like this, but we're going to constantly try and create that trust and see if we could offer them services and get them help.
Just out of curiosity, is there like a number that would create an encampment? Or I know a lot of people, when they see a cluster of...
Yeah, let me speak to this first and others chime in. For years, under bluntly the previous 2 administrations, there were encampments. They were permanent places where people lived. Some of you, I think, were with us when we went and oversaw one being dismantled up in the Bronx a few years ago. We do not allow any permanent outdoor homeless encampments in New York City. We have not for the last few years. I want to commend the NYPD, homeless services, social services, sanitation. Everyone's on the same page. It's not allowable. If, as Terry said, someone shows up with a shopping cart or someone puts down a piece of cardboard to sleep on, we're going to go address that. But what we used to have was a bunch of mattresses, a structure that people created to sleep under. That was somehow tolerated in this city. I think it was a tremendous example of disorder that we no longer tolerate. The order is clear. I've given it personally to all these agencies. If they see one, they take it down immediately.
Are you saying that in your 2 administrations there are no encampments? Because I think people
No encampments, what I just described, a place where people permanently sleep with physical structures in this city. If you know of one, tell us. We'll go take it down immediately. It's not allowable in this city.
1 or 2 more on police issues, please? Yep.
Second row. There was a off-duty police officer who had a service weapon in the car stolen reportedly by a prostitute in Brooklyn. I was wondering if he'll face charges or disciplinary action.
Well, he was immediately suspended, and he'll be facing some disciplinary action, and we're working on the investigation. Rocco? Okay.
That's all, guys. Police matters. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Here we go. Other topics, yes.
WNYC. So, in the New York Times investigation into the Trump family finances, there were a couple of places where it seemed like there were indications that the city could have done more to accurately account for the money that was flowing in and out, specifically as it related to rent regulations and major capital improvements, which I understand to still be a problem today in terms of tracking and keeping records of what qualifies as a major capital improvement. And the other one is appraisals of property. What could the city have done differently? What should it be doing differently now to deal with such things?
Okay, let me break it down. There's a couple elements to say the least. First of all, tremendous appreciation to the New York Times for one of the most exhaustive stories we've ever seen in our lives, and it could not be a more important topic, and extraordinary amount of resources obviously went into uncovering all that. But it's also an indictment of the culture of New York City and New York State going back decades. There was a good old boy network that obviously Donald Trump played like a fiddle and evaded the kind of regulation and investigation and prosecution he should have received many times over. It's quite clear. And not just in these matters, the tax matters, but in other matters as well. I think the bigger history will come out at some point about how he, finagled and paid his way to being somehow able to escape the kind of scrutiny and prosecution he deserved. And honestly, if a lot of people in New York State had done their jobs, he would never have been president of the United States. So that's unmistakable in this article, but we knew a lot of that already. Second, it's clear to me that there are real ramifications right now to what has been disclosed, that there's either potential violations of the law, or in the cases where the statute of limitations has ended, that there may be very serious civil penalties that can be applied by both the state and the city. We are looking to recoup, and let's be really clear, City of New York is looking to recoup any money that Donald Trump owes the people of New York City, period. And we will work with the state, and we are going to look under every stone. Because I said earlier this morning, that's money that could be going to veterans, could be going to seniors, could be going to kids that he should have paid in taxes and didn't. So we are going to go and pursue that with all vigor. On the question of ensuring that our own house is in order, the MCIs, to the best of my understanding of the way MCI regulation works, that is the state, that's DHCR first and foremost. I don't think MCI regulation is being handled properly right now. But I think it's because the law is too weak, and we have a chance in Albany to go strengthen that law. The MCIs are not only being assessed inappropriately in many cases, but the law allows permanent rent change based on an MCI that should only merit a temporary rent change. That's a law problem, first and foremost. But in terms of everything that we need to do on rent regulation, we've strengthened it, but we've got to go farther. So I think job one is stronger laws in Albany in the next legislative session. But it's absolutely clear the city needs to use every power we have to make sure that our part of rent regulation is being applied strenuously. State has its own piece, but wherever we can, and I think our buildings department needs to do more, our housing department needs to do more. The city council's been great about giving us some additional tools like the anti-harassment law. But I don't think we're done yet by any means in terms of improving our own approach to regulation.
Be done. For example, last month, I think the Housing Rights Initiative had this report about all these fines that haven't been collected. So what could the city departments do differently?
I think it's clear that there has been an uptick over the last 5 years, but we need to go farther. So I would argue that before this administration, there was a pretty lax approach towards developers and landlords. We changed the rules of engagement. And we have obviously cracked down on a lot of things that used to be ignored. The council gave us greater power, greater penalties to work with. I'd like more penalties. I'd like stronger penalties. Something, I long ago worked on a thing called the Worst Landlords Watch List when I was public advocate. And what we still need is stronger penalties via state law to hold accountable landlords that do the wrong thing. And that's another thing we're going to fight for in Albany in the legislative session. And I think a change in the state Senate will, I'm very hopeful, will allow that. But within the law and within the tools we have now, I want to see a more aggressive approach. I think it's been improved. I don't think we've reached everywhere that we need to reach. Yes.
I want to ask you about Mark Peters. Do you think that he's done a good job as the investigations commissioner? And given that you considered firing him earlier this year, is that still under consideration, especially in the upcoming whistleblower report?
In the light of what?
Upcoming whistleblower investigation?
Yeah, so there's obviously an investigation underway, and I'm not going to characterize anything in the midst of investigation. Let's let that investigation run its course. Let's see what it yields. I've said on all personnel matters, I don't project, I don't critique publicly. I will reserve my rights when I see that information to determine what I think is best for the city.
How do you think he's done a good job?
Again, I don't think it's appropriate to comment in any way, shape, or form while an investigation is underway.
In the past, you strongly defended Shola Olatoye at NYCHA, even though there was an ongoing federal investigation into her tenure at NYCHA. You strongly defended Joseph Pont, even though the COIB was at that point looking into his vehicle use. So you, in the past, have spoken out in favor of your commissioners when they were under attack.
I think in this instance, each instance is different. It's not appropriate to comment. Yes.
Mayor, this is a school food question. For the last several days, I've been doing stories about moldy bread that's turned up in a lot of schools because the bread contract was changed. Instead of fresh bread being delivered daily, it's delivered twice a week. It turns moldy. I wonder in any way, shape, or form you find this acceptable and what are you going to do about it?
It's absolutely unacceptable. Our children need the best available food and certainly not moldy bread. Everything related to school food is now being reassessed. As you know, the previous leadership has been removed. And there is new leadership tasked with evaluating everything that has happened there. And there's other key figures in DOE looking at the situation as well. We don't accept anything but the best for our kids. And you know my kids went to public school. It's not acceptable to me to think that anyone was providing a product to our kids that we wouldn't eat ourselves. So we're going to get down to the bottom of that. We're going to make sure the food is good, but more importantly, we're going to also make sure that entire operation is reviewed and any further changes that need to be made there will be made.
Allegations that you're not getting the best bang for the buck, that so many things are you're paying too much for. I have like a full stack of things. Are you going to be auditing the contract?
Yes.
To see if you could possibly get the same thing for less?
Unquestionably. Look, everything that was done by the previous leadership of that unit is now going to be under review. As we've learned more, and it started with some of the particular problems with the school bus service earlier this year, and that has caused more and more reevaluation. Obviously, we have a new chancellor who's taking a new look at things, and what he found was unacceptable. And everything is going to be looked at when it comes to school buses, when it comes to school food, and there's not going to be any sacred cows. Whatever we have to change, we're going to change.
The presidential alert that will be going out today.
Sure.
FEMA, what is your reaction to it? And maybe the police commission could talk to it as well, because if we're getting a national alert in this city for something that impacts us, does that conflict with maybe the message you want to get out in an emergency?
Look, let's try our damnedest to be above the fray on this question. Is there a place for a national alert under certain circumstances? I would say objectively yes, if it's done the right way. If it's only done in very specific context, very carefully, very responsibly, very maturely. But there could be a circumstance in which it's needed. One could have argued on the day of 9/11, for example, that would have been an appropriate day for a national alert. We've done it here, obviously, when we experienced a terror attack, and that was an appropriate use of it here. So I'm not against the concept, but I sure as hell hope it is handled very rarely and maturely and carefully.
And if and when it does happen, Dean, we just have to make sure that we're in communication wherever that alert is coming from, and that their messaging is consistent with ours.
Yeah.
Mayor, on New York One Monday night, you tried to make the case that your office is all about transparency based on the release of the emails last week. How can you say that when you were forced by the courts to do so, and then you released the emails on one of the busiest news days of the year?
So a couple of things. On the release, we've been working for a long time. I was not involved in the specific logistics of it, but we've been working a long time to get that information out. It's all out, and I think you would agree when something is put in the public domain, particularly something that extensive, all of you and the public can look at it as long as they want and discuss it and bring it up at any point. So I'm a little less obsessed with the release date than all of you, because I think transparency is transparency. It's out there in the public domain permanently. I do believe there's a lot of things we've done in this administration that make us more transparent than any previous administration, including what we're doing around lobbyist disclosure, for example. No previous administration did that. We've done it. We've expanded it. We continue to, in every way we can, find new venues to add to transparency. But my point was not that the court didn't require it. And I still think that was wrong, because everyone was operating under legal guidance and thought they were doing things appropriately. But my point was, all that information's out. I don't think you've ever seen as many emails from a mayor to a mayor in this much detail in the history of the mayoralty. I don't think you have another mayor who's ever disclosed all lobbying contacts in this way, and had other figures in the administration do the same. We got a lot more work to do. The work of transparency is ongoing, but I'm very comfortable that you all have a whole lot of information, and I think arguably more than you've had with any other mayoralty. Please. Oh, wait, Julian hasn't gone yet.
So just to kind of follow up on Rich's question, you brought up lobbying, but these emails also show that former employees of yours who went on to work for Hilltop were then sort of pretty quickly reaching back out to City Hall on behalf of their clients and not registering as having lobbied for those clients, even though Jacob now says even just reaching out and trying to schedule a meeting should count as lobbying. Do you think that this is a problem? Is this something that City Hall should be doing?
I don't know. I just don't know all the rules. Obviously, anyone in that situation needs to seek guidance. The place I would turn to is not Jacob. I'd turn to Conflict Interest Board for the city in that instance. And they should follow that guidance. So it's each case is individual. I'm not familiar with all the specifics, but that's the standard that should be held.
On the Trump issue, you were speaking about making sure that New York City gets its money from Donald Trump. I'm curious if you've reevaluated at all the city's contracts with him in city parks, particularly, where most of them are. Councilman Mark Levine over the summer had argued that the city should consider trying to get out of those contracts because of what had come out in Cohen's trial and other trials of people or court proceedings of people related to Trump, and sort of a precedent for getting out of these kinds of contracts if there was potential criminal wrongdoing.
Look, the last time I looked at this, and it may be a little bit farther back than you're referring to, but last time some issues were raised about the contracts, there was not a grounds that we had to get out of those contracts. Now, if new information comes up that suggests a contract was inappropriately gained or is not being fulfilled or there's some kind of fraud, of course that could be grounds for getting out of a contract. So I'll certainly have my team look at whether there's any new information that might lead to that. But I want to emphasize, this is an area where we have to be careful. It's not about politics or different views. It has to be about the legal merits. Yeah.
You just hired a chief democracy officer who hasn't been a consistent voter. Why should New Yorkers look to her as a leader on voting issues when she skipped numerous primary elections, including the one last year when you were running in the primary?
Because she has devoted her life to empowering people in a whole variety of ways, not just in terms of voting, but in a number of other important venues to encourage grassroots involvement and participation. Look, I agree with the statement that she put forward that everyday people, real people, struggle to vote in the current system because there's no early voting, because there's no same-day registration, there's no vote by mail. And I think her explanation of some of the things that were going on in her life at various moments rings true. I also think some people don't choose to vote in primary elections. That is a very different matter than choosing to vote in a general election. I would love to see everyone vote in all primaries and all general elections, but the one that people, I think, civically have to focus on the most, of course, is the general election. And from what I've seen, she voted very consistently in general elections, so I'm perfectly comfortable with the situation.
In February, about you want to encourage always voters. That was your phrase.
Yeah.
Always voters. Now you're saying that skipping primary elections in New York City.
No, I'm saying I understand. Don't creatively reinterpret my words. I just said, right this minute, I have an audience that heard it. I'd like to see people vote in all primaries and all general elections. I understand that some people regard primaries differently, and the ultimate decisive election, of course, is a general election. My goal is to see the most consistent participation possible. Yes?
Getting back to Donald Trump and the MCIs, it's clear from the Times story that he got a number of rent increases based on bogus MCI reports. Is it possible for the city to force him to roll back the rents in those buildings and for those apartments where the rent increases were based on false numbers?
It's a great question. I don't know the answer yet. Again, with MCIs, there's a state regulatory role, so we have to figure out what they do and what we do. Is it conceivable? I think it is, but I don't know enough about the facts yet to say if we can definitely do it. If we can do it, we should. Yeah.
I've got to ask about raise the age, if I can.
Okay, well, that's a reinterpretation of where my pen was going. We'll do these three. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, do the foils and the email dumps make you more cautious about using email or what you say in emails, or do you use a different kind of a form of communication now as a result of having read some of your own emails?
Yes. Look, I think I know about myself, and I believe it's true about a lot of people, that we got so used to using email that we would express ourselves very openly, very bluntly. I don't think there's anything in those emails that all of us don't say in everyday conversation, if you will, stylistically. But yeah, it has caused me to email less and to some extent speak differently in emails. And, as I said, I think everyone believed that they were doing the normal back and forth kind of conversation that you do with your colleagues. No one thought these are things that were going to be published one day, and it definitely is smart to use email less. That's the bottom line. Yes?
Mayor, can you talk about NYCHA Executive VP for Real Estate who abruptly resigned and the City Council had to cancel a hearing that was scheduled for today? Is there anything you can tell us about her resignation or anything you know about it?
I can only tell you that it didn't work out. I mean, my understanding is she had been there a year or less, and it just didn't work out for her in that role. I don't know the specifics around the timing or the hearing. We can get you follow-up on that.
What about it?
I don't. I mean, obviously, I heard about it as you did just in the last night, and so my understanding is, she had been hired into a role by the previous leadership. As people worked with her one way or another, it just didn't work out. I don't know the specifics, but I'll make sure we follow up.
What are your thoughts on the Working Families Party moving Cynthia Nixon off the line to Cuomo on the line? Just generally, if you are supportive of that move, you've been obviously closely involved with the party. Do you think that they should do this?
I said on Monday, I'll say it again, I am not going to comment on their process. I want to respect their process. They should do as they see fit. I've made clear that I'm endorsing the Democratic ticket, but I think for a lot of reasons, it's just important to let them make their own choices. Go ahead.
Raise the age, your comments about the 16 and 17-year-olds now not being charged, prosecuted as adults, but also at the horizon, there are issues because the correction officers are saying the kids don't have a lot of, structure now, and the officers can't use their mace. I've received videos of fights on Rikers now. I've received photos of some of the kids wearing CO uniforms at Horizon already.
Okay, well, I'm not going to comment on photos I haven't seen and have not been, no disrespect to you, but I haven't seen those photos, nor has anyone in my team reported those to me. I'm just going to comment on the broader point. We were put under a very strict timeline to get all juveniles out of our jail system. A lot of people thought it was a timeline that could not be met. I want to commend everyone at Department of Corrections, at ACS, at City Hall, who did extraordinary work achieving this deadline. As of the afternoon of September 30th, there were no longer any juveniles in our jails. That's a stunning achievement, and I commend them all. The new facilities have been set up to be secure, and there's been a lot of cooperation in putting that together. It is a brand-new approach. It's certainly going to take some work to perfect it, but we must keep those facilities secure. There's going to be a lot of programming. I think one of the things we found in the whole history we've had here with corrections is the more programming, the better to engage all detainees to make sure that they are doing something constructive. But let's be clear, if there are any instances where one of these young people acts violently, one, they will be transferred to a more restrictive setting. Two, depending on what it is, they can be charged with an additional crime, and that can lead to additional consequences, including longer sentences, and that's been true in the jail system as well. So we're going to be very stringent about that, but I think as something that's just begun, and begun on a very tight timeline, I think it's gotten off to a start that shows us we can get the job done. Thanks, everyone.